1956. The biggest variety show on television wanted Sammy Davis Jr. as a guest. The ratings would be huge. The publicity incredible. There was just one problem. They didn't want to actually show him. The producer's instructions to the camera crew were explicit. Keep him in wide shots. No close-ups. If he moves toward camera, pull back. We booked him because his name sells, but we can't have a Negro's face filling American TV screens. So they planned to hide him in plain sight. Book the star, but keep the cameras trained on the white performers. What they didn't account for was Sammy's dancing. When he started moving, the studio audience went wild. The cameras, operated by union guys who didn't care about the producer's racism, followed the action. And suddenly, despite every attempt to keep him in the background, Sammy Davis Jr., his face was filling television screens across America. The performance they tried to hide that became impossible to ignore. It was 1956, and television was the most powerful medium in America. If you appeared on a major variety show, Ed Sullivan, Perry Como, Steve Allen, you reached millions of people in a single night. For performers, it could make or break a career. For black performers, it was more complicated. Television executives wanted the talent and the ratings that black entertainers could bring, but they were terrified of Southern sponsors pulling their advertising if they showed black faces too prominently on screen. The solution was a delicate dance. Book the black performers, but film them in ways that minimize their presence. Wide shots instead of close-ups. Group numbers instead of solos. Background instead of center stage. It was segregation by camera angle. Sammy Davis Jr. was, by 1956, one of the most talented performers in America. He could sing, dance, do impressions, play multiple instruments. He was a phenomenon, and variety show producers knew that having his name on the bill would boost ratings. But they didn't want him to be too visible. The booking came through Sammy's agent in early 1956. One of the biggest variety shows on television, let's call it the Saturday Variety Hour, wanted Sammy for their spring season. It was a huge opportunity. 15 million viewers, national exposure. The kind of appearance that could take Sammy from nightclub star to household name. The producer, a man named Robert Harrison, called Sammy's agent personally. "We'd love to have Sammy on the show," Harrison said. "He's incredibly talented. Our audience would love him." "That's wonderful," the agent said. "What kind of segment are you thinking?" There was a pause. "We're thinking a group number, maybe a dance sequence with our regular performers. Sammy would be featured, of course. Just not, too featured." The agent understood exactly what that meant. "How featured are we talking?" "Well, we have Southern sponsors to consider. And some viewers might not be ready for certain presentations. But we absolutely want Sammy's talent on the show. We'll make sure he's treated professionally." What Harrison meant, though he'd never say it directly, was we want Sammy Davis Jr.'s name on the credits and his talent in the performance, but we don't want his black face filling TV screens and living rooms across the South. When Sammy's agent relayed the offer, Sammy's first instinct was to refuse. "They want me, but they don't want to show me," Sammy said. "That's insulting." "It's television," his agent said. "This is how it works right now. You take the booking, you get the exposure, and you use it to build your career. Then when you have more leverage, you change the terms." Sammy knew his agent was right. Television exposure was too valuable to turn down over principle. He'd faced worse humiliations than camera angles. "Fine," Sammy said. "I'll do it. But I'm not going to make it easy for them." Rehearsals began 2 weeks before the show. The segment Sammy was booked for was a big production number, a jazz-themed dance sequence featuring the show's regular dancers and guest performers. On the first day of rehearsal, the choreographer, a woman named Linda Chen, gathered everyone together. "This is a high-energy number," she said. "Everyone needs to be giving 100%. Sammy, you'll be positioned stage left, integrated with the ensemble." Stage left. The far edge of the performance space, as far from center as possible. Sammy said nothing. He'd expected this. Then Robert Harrison, the producer, arrived. He pulled the director of photography aside, and though they spoke quietly, Sammy was close enough to hear. "Remember what we discussed," Harrison said. "Wide shots for this number. We keep the cameras pulled back. If Davis moves forward, the camera doesn't follow. We hold the wide. The DP nodded. What if the audience reacts to him specifically? They won't. He's in the ensemble. He'll blend in. The DP looked skeptical but said nothing. Over the next week of rehearsals, Sammy learned the choreography. It was good, energetic, technically challenging, well designed. But it was also designed to keep all the dancers equal. No one performer stood out. Everyone moved in unison, which worked for everyone except Sammy. Because Sammy Davis Jr. didn't know how to blend in. When he danced, he didn't just execute the moves. He inhabited them. His energy was different. More explosive. More dynamic. Even when he was trying to match the ensemble, he stood out. Linda, the choreographer, noticed it immediately. Sammy, she said, after one run-through. You're dancing the choreography correctly, but you're bigger than everyone else. Can you pull back a little? Sammy looked at her. You want me to dance worse? Not worse. Just more. Blended. I don't know how to dance blended. Sammy said. I know how to dance. Linda sighed. She understood the impossible position Sammy was in, asked to perform but not stand out. Asked to be talented but not too talented. Do your best, she said finally. The night of the live broadcast arrived. The show aired at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to approximately 15 million viewers across the country. Backstage, 30 minutes before airtime, Robert Harrison gave the camera crew their final instructions. Remember, wide shots on the dance number. No close-ups, no singles. We keep it ensemble all the way through. The lead camera operator, a union guy named Tommy, raised his hand. What if something happens that demands a close-up? What if someone falls or there's an accident? There won't be, Harrison said. Just stick to the plan. Tommy exchanged glances with the other camera operators. They all knew what this was about. They'd been shooting television long enough to know that no close-ups directives were usually about race. The show began. The first hour went smoothly. Comedy sketches, a singer performing a ballad, a magician doing tricks. Then, at 9:15 p.m., it was time for the big dance number. The studio audience, about 200 people, was prepped. The band started playing. The curtain rose. 8 dancers, including Sammy, exploded onto the stage. For the first 30 seconds, everything went according to plan. Wide shot, 8 dancers moving in unison. Jazz music pumping, clean, professional, exactly as rehearsed. Sammy was on stage left, as assigned, executing the choreography, precisely, blending with the ensemble. And then, at the 45-second mark, the choreography called for a brief freestyle moment. Each dancer got 2 beats to improvise before returning to the formation. When Sammy's 2 beats arrived, he did something the other dancers couldn't do. He flew. Not literally. But it looked like it. A combination of tap, spin, and jump that defied physics. 2 beats that contained more movement, more energy, more technique than most dancers could do in 30 seconds. The studio audience gasped. Then they started screaming. Tommy, operating camera 2, instinctively swung toward Sammy. Years of training told him, follow the action. Capture what the audience is reacting to. He zoomed in. Sammy's face filled the monitor. In the control room, Harrison saw it happen. No, wide shot. Get back to wide. But Tommy was already committed. And the audience reaction was building. More screams. Applause, starting even though the number wasn't over. The choreography continued. The dancers returned to formation. But now the audience was watching Sammy. Only Sammy. 30 seconds later. Another freestyle moment. This time, Sammy did a move that made the other dancers stop and watch. The tap sequence so fast. His feet blurred, punctuated by a spin and a freeze that got perfect silence from the audience, followed by an explosion of applause. Camera 3 followed him. Close up. Sammy's face, concentrating, joyful, completely in the moment. Harrison in the control room. God damn it, I said wide shots. But something was happening that Harrison couldn't control. The studio audience wasn't applauding the ensemble anymore. They were applauding Sammy. Every time he moved, they screamed. Every trick, every spin, every impossible step got a reaction. And the camera operators, who were professionals trained to capture the story, followed the story, which was Sammy. By the final minute of the number, the choreography had essentially broken down. The other dancers were still executing the moves, but everyone in the studio, the audience, the camera crew, the band, was focused on Sammy. He was doing things that shouldn't have been possible. Tap dancing while doing impressions, singing while spinning, moving across the stage like gravity didn't apply to him. Camera 1, close-up on his feet. Camera 2, close-up on his face. Camera 3, following him across the stage. All 3 cameras had abandoned the wide shot. All 3 were trained on Sammy Davis Jr. In living rooms across America, 15 million people were watching a black man's face fill their television screens, watching him smile, watching him sweat, watching him perform, at a level that made everything else on television look pedestrian. The number ended. Sammy hit his final pose. The studio audience erupted. Standing ovation, screaming, whistling. Harrison sat in the control room, defeated. He'd tried to hide Sammy Davis Jr., and the cameras, the audience, and Sammy's own talent had made it impossible. After the show, Harrison didn't congratulate Sammy. Didn't even acknowledge him. He went straight to his office and started fielding phone calls from sponsors. But here's what Harrison didn't expect. The sponsors weren't angry. They were thrilled, because the ratings for that episode were the highest the show had seen all season. The dance number was the most talked about segment. Critics raved about it. Viewers called the network asking when Sammy would be back. Harrison had tried to minimize Sammy's presence to avoid controversy. Instead, he'd accidentally made Sammy the star of the episode. And the audience, even the Southern audience Harrison had been so worried about, loved it. Because talent is undeniable. When someone is that good, camera angles don't matter. Producer instructions don't matter. Even racism doesn't matter. People want to watch excellence. 2 weeks later, Harrison called Sammy's agent. "We'd like to book Sammy again," he said. "Ensemble number?" the agent asked, unable to keep the sarcasm out of his voice. "No," Harrison said quietly. "Solo, center stage. Whatever he wants to do." The agent smiled. "I'll let him know." When Sammy returned to the show 6 months later, there were no instructions to the camera crew about wide shots. No attempts to hide him in the background. He performed a 7-minute solo, singing, dancing, doing impressions, and the cameras captured every second. And the ratings were even higher than the first appearance. Years later, in 1982, Sammy was being interviewed about his career. The interviewer asked about breaking barriers in television. Sammy told the story of that first variety show appearance. The instructions to stay in wide shots. The producer's fear of showing his face. "How did you feel about that?" the interviewer asked. Sammy thought for a moment. "I felt like every black performer feels when white gatekeepers decide how much of you is acceptable. Angry, humiliated, determined to prove them wrong." "And did you?" "I didn't have to prove anything," Sammy said. "I just had to dance. Because here's what producers like Harrison never understood. You can try to hide talent. You can position cameras to avoid it. You can choreograph around it. But when someone is truly gifted, you can't keep them in the background. The audience won't let you. The cameras won't let you. And the performer sure as hell won't let you. So the cameras following you, that wasn't planned? It was the opposite of planned. It was camera operators doing their job, following the action, capturing what the audience was reacting to. Harrison wanted them to point the cameras at mediocrity and ignore excellence. But that's not how television works. That's not how audiences work. You can't force people to ignore something extraordinary just because it makes you uncomfortable. Do you think that performance changed how television treated black performers? Not single-handedly, but it was part of a shift. Producers realized that trying to hide talented black performers was bad business. The audience wanted to see us. Sponsors wanted the ratings we brought. So the camera angles changed. The bookings changed. We went from background to center stage. Not because producers suddenly stopped being racist, but because they realized racism was costing them money and ratings. The camera operators from that night, the ones who'd ignored Harrison's instructions, were never reprimanded, because the ratings proved them right. They'd made the correct professional decision. Follow the talent. Capture the story. Tommy, the lead camera operator, retired in 1975. In his exit interview with the network, someone asked him about his most memorable shoot. "Sammy Davis Jr., 1956, he said, without hesitation. The night the producer told us not to show him, and we showed him anyway, not because we were trying to make a statement about race, but because we were cameramen, and he was the only thing worth filming. You point the camera at what matters. And that night, Sammy was all that mattered. When Sammy Davis Jr. died in 1990, his obituaries focused on his groundbreaking career, his talent, his role in breaking racial barriers in entertainment. One of the stories that got retold was that 1956 variety show appearance, the night a producer tried to hide him and failed. The night cameras meant to avoid him couldn't help but follow him. It became symbolic of something larger. The idea that excellence cannot be hidden, that talent will always find a way to be seen, that you can position cameras to avoid someone, but if they're extraordinary enough, the cameras will turn toward them anyway. Because racism can control bookings. It can control contracts. It can control a lot of things. But it can't control where an audience looks. It can't control what cameras naturally follow. And it can't make extraordinary talent look ordinary, no matter how carefully you frame the shot. Sammy Davis Jr. was supposed to be background, hidden in wide shots, minimized to satisfy racist sponsors and nervous producers. Instead, he became the only thing worth watching. Not because he demanded it, but because when you're that talented, invisibility isn't an option, even when someone's trying very hard to make you disappear. If this story of undeniable talent forcing visibility, despite systematic attempts to hide it, moved you, make sure to subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear that excellence cannot be hidden, no matter how carefully someone frames the shot. Have you ever been told to make yourself smaller to make others comfortable? How did you respond? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible true stories about the legends who showed us that some things are too brilliant to hide.